fill me in because you've played a lot of these kind of belty roles. Is this
Yes, indeed, I have.
is this the most difficult one?
That's a great question. It's difficult in a different way than other roles were difficult, I think. Fanny really doesn't leave the stage and she sings a ton of songs. But this role for me, it's in my wheelhouse. It like sits in the right place for me. I would say, I would say that Elphaba was harder.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I also think I didn't get a ton of opportunities to go on for that role. So it was always very scary and very intimidating every time I went on. Like I would go on once or twice every 13 months, which
Okay.
is just, it can be intimidating and you don't really have the tools or it's not in your body very well. So I feel like with this, I've also just gotten it in my body so much more. So it just feels so much easier now.
Okay, when you got this role, do you feel the big kind of cloud of Barbara hanging over it all the time? Or do you say, I've discovered this is a different show than because we remember so differently. And I think people don't realize that the play is not the movie.
No, it's not. And our play is actually not the original Broadway production either. Harvey Firestein and Julie Stein. Well, Harvey Firestein rewrote the book, and they added in more songs from Julie Stein's, catalog of songs that he had written for the show. He wrote over 40 songs for the show. So our show is also very different than the original Broadway production. As far as Barbara goes, I think I saw the movie when I was very young. I was Barbara obsessed, and she, she put her own stamp on the role, and she really made the role the iconic thing that it is. She, you know, rose to fame because of it, in the movie industry, on the Broadway industry. And I think for me, it was more about going back to the source material and going back to who Fanny was, instead of like looking to Barbara as a spring, as a jumping off point. Um, so I think mine is very different than Barbara's. I'm a different person. The show is different, and it's also it's each actor's job to bring what they connect to in the character, and also, especially in this production, to honor the original character, and in our case, to honor Fanny. So I think mine is very different than Barbara's, and no one will ever be Barbara, so why even try at that
She's
point?
not Barbara, right? One of those things.
Yeah.
But when you see films or videos of Fanny Brice, you go, "This isn't what I thought Fanny Brice looked like or acted like." I mean, she's
No,
very funny, but you don't tie her in with being a musical person at all.
no, I think she wasn't the big singer that Barbara was. Barbara was a cabaret singer to begin with. Her voice is unmatched. And Fanny was really a comedian first, and she was famous for being a comedian. And I also think that, she rose to a lot of fame for her rendition of My Man, which is actually not in the musical. But that was in part because of the emotional connection she had to the song. She was an actress. She, really knew how to connect and breathe life into the audience and these roles she created, just like Barbara did. So
Sure.
there is a connection, but I think the root of those two individuals is very different. As is, the root of being in musical theater is to be a singer and an actor. You have to marry the two. Whereas Fanny wasn't really in musical theater; she was in the Follies, which was a
Right.
very different entity back then.
Yeah, she had a different role to play in that
Yeah,
thing. Well, when they had this kind of controversy about Beanie being in it, and I love Beanie, by the way, so just let's put
so
that
do
out.
I. I think she's incredible.
I mean, do you say, "Oh, I don't want to touch this role at all," or do you say, "Oh, bring it"?
No, I wanted to bring it.
Okay.
I actually auditioned for the Broadway production too, and I did not book that job. But I think what Beanie brought to the table was just so different and so unique. And each Fanny is so different and so unique. So there's really no comparison across the board. I mean, between Leah and Julie and Beanie and Barbara and me, like, I just feel honored and humbled to be a part of the incredible women that have played this part.
At what point do you feel the audience is on your side? There must be some point in the show where you go, "Okay, I got them. They're with me now. I can do it."
Yeah, I try not too much to depend on the audiences because, every audience is different, especially city to city. The audience manner is different. But I will say the point in the audience where I can feel them really drop in is people.
Okay.
It's the first time in the show. I mean, they're always so responsive and wonderful throughout the show. But, Act One starts off really just like rolling really quickly with a lot of comedy, a lot of storytelling. And then all of a sudden, people happens and everyone kind of has to like lean in a little. It gets really intimate.
Sure.
And that's my favorite moment of the show because you start to feel them connect to the love relationship between Nick and Fanny and the intimacy that's happening, which is so different than the rest of the beginning of the first act.
Do you relate to Fanny at all? Are there things that you can say, yep, we're alike?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, we're both New York Jewish women who love comedy. Growing up, I used comedy to connect with people throughout my entire life. I also came from a family of artists. And while, Mrs. Brice may not have been like an artist traditionally, she was a self-made woman, which was very, rare at the time. And her brother Lou was also in the theater. So, we definitely have similarities across the board.
Okay, but then you've got Melissa Manchester with you.
The iconic Melissa Manchester. She is fantastic.
How does that happen, right?
I wish I knew because honestly, I would hire her for everything. She's
Right.
incredible. She's so, incredibly supportive and so grounded and earthy as Mrs. Brice. She's such a generous scene partner. She's such a beautiful singer and an incredible leader. She is unmatched.
So
Truly.
do you ask like gossipy things of her? Do you say, all right, well, what was this like? What was that like?
No,
Or
I don't know. I feel like she's still low drama. Well, here's a little story. I and the guy who plays Nick Arnstein watch a Disney movie every Sunday night. And this week
because
because we both like, we want our rest on Sundays. It's the
okay,
last day of the week. We're both tired. So we have this like tradition of watching an old Disney movie. And last week we chose The Great Mouse Detective and we realized Melissa Manchester is in it.
yes,
And
yeah.
we were both like, oh, that's Melissa. And she was like, oh yeah, it was so fun to do. I loved writing the song. And it's amazing. She's been working for so long in so many genres, the recording industry, the voiceover industry, Broadway. I mean, she's just a star.